Oh, hello again. I'm glad you made it back. Well, I have no sense of time nowadays, but I think a couple of years ago, I had the pleasure of going to three different cities over there in the UK with some of our friends from BT as they were rolling out, modernizing a lot of what they were doing and using the Tanzu application service. So I always look forward to seeing what else is going on over there. And Steve is coming up next. And he's got a great session, I think, that covers not only sort of the coding part of modernizing, but a lot of the what I would call meatware, the people and process and kind of more a holistic approach of looking at things. So I hope you're looking forward to it as much as I am. And let's check it out.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Michael. So I'll share with you today a little bit about our journey in modernization within BT, how we get started, and some of the things we learned along the way. So just to kind of share a bit, I've been involved with transformations over the last 10 years within mobile telecommunications and now with BT and fixed line. So a lot of interesting stuff that I've been involved with. And this is kind of an iteration and a bit of a learning journey for me as well in terms of how we get through modernization. So I'll share a little bit about what BT is trying to do in terms of transformation. What was our problem statement? What were you trying to solve? What was the intent behind our modernization? A little bit about how we set ourselves up. What was behind the structure, and using a bit of the tribe kind of methodology. How we took our first slice. So what was the approach to doing that? How do we take our first application and start that modernization? Then we started to think about how we scale it. What are the things we wanted to do to kind of take it further and scale it up across the organization? And then finally, just kind of share the lessons learned and how we're taking that forward into our journey. So just to share a bit about BT's transformation, it's quite an exciting time actually to be part of BT right now. There's some real drive and ambition behind what we're trying to do, to take it forward into kind of the future and really kind of modernize it in a way that that kind of not just kind of turns it into, continuing to be a telco, but really driving into a digico. We've got a new digital officer, chief digital officer in Harvey Mehta. She's got some great vision, and you may see some of the articles. It's worth having a look, what her vision is and what she's looking to do in driving our modernization. There's a lot of work around how we kind of, adopt modern methods, becoming much more responsive to our customer needs. Certainly making things a lot simpler to do business with us and interacting with us. We're kind of heading into a much flatter organization, making, people a lot more accountable, but actually, driving that modernization in a way that is, super important to us to make decisions a lot faster and in a lot more agile way. We're looking at how we kind of structure ourselves, so the moving towards the tribes and squads. I'll talk a little bit about that into what that looks like, but making better informed, smarter decisions more locally within the teams. Really making them much more empowered to take us on that journey. The acceleration to the modern technology, trying to look at a lot more of the modern technologies that help, around, containerization and microservices. How do we take those forward? Including, adopting public cloud. Cloud is an important part, even for us as a technology company. Public cloud is an important part of our strategy to help us with that modernization and use of SaaS services as well. So lots of adoptions of and kind of transition from perhaps some of those legacy technologies that we use today. And most importantly, removing that complexity and the legacy from our estate to reduce the time to market. Helping our customers in a way that they just want to come back time and time again. So removing those elements of complexity that really make it difficult to do business with us. We've got a range of customers, consumer all the way through to large enterprises that want to do business with us, and we already know today that some of those areas that are challenging, and we really want to make those a much better experience. So just to take you into some more, some specifics here, as I touched on, really simplifying the architecture. We've got a lot in our estate which has kind of grown with us. A lot of organic growth as part of being a telco. It's really taking that to the next level of simplifying the journeys, the customer journeys, the interactions of our systems, to help us with making those things simpler and easier to do business with us. Modernizing the application estate, this is what this is all about now. This is how you use, smarter technologies to make better decisions, to help us with, how the application estate is supported, maintained, and essentially kind of gives us, a much more cost-effective method to support our customers using those modern technologies, for CI/CD, for continuous delivery, supporting, really getting the features and the capabilities that our customers need in a much shorter time scale. Establishing a new operating model. So, this is very much about how we work today. Lots of areas and lots of teams that work in a traditional method. We're really driving towards the DevOps and AIOps type structures and approaches to really modernize our estate to make sure that we can, not just get modern technology in there, but we're adapting how we approach those things to really deliver those core functionality a lot faster. Use agile working practices, so we're absolutely, pivoting, the approach we take in the squad structures to really, get the working groups going, get those teams that perhaps live in silos today, break down those barriers, and really get the teams, very fluid and very, focused on the things that need to be solved and resolved. And then, most importantly, remove that legacy where we have some of the technologies that are perhaps maybe holding us back, or we're slow moving. We really need to kind of transition to the modern technology, and absolutely remove that from our estate. It's always a bit of a challenge in big organisations to end up with kind of situations where you've still got some of your legacy hanging around, and we really want to drive removal as fast as we can. So what was the problem statement? We had a number of things that we were looking at when we set up the tribe. Lots of people looking at in a similar way at the estate. There are lots of challenges that we faced, but it was particularly difficult about trying to understand what are the implications. It's a big, complex estate, and we wanted to be able to kind of take a view of our estate and work out what do we want to do, how do we approach any of the modernization that we wanted to do. So key for us was building views and understanding how it hangs together, so that we could kind of take that and move it into our modernization journey. We fundamentally didn't know how to start. There's lots of pockets of modernization going on across BT, perhaps a little bit isolated and not necessarily always consistent. And there's a kind of bit of a hesitancy about public cloud. Certainly from a security perspective, it's always easy for people to kind of stay in their comfort zone and use the things they know. But we really wanted to drive the change in the culture and the thought process around certain things like public cloud. We had a number of things around, how do we make sure where we've got closure of, those connected elements. It's always difficult and challenging in a large, complex estate. So we need to kind of work out how we could understand that and solve that picture. Some things we knew would take months of analysis to try and build that picture. We want to think about that in terms of automation to build those views. How do we realize cost savings? Some of these things are about not just how the business responds, but also how do we do it in a really effective and efficient way, so that we can kind of realize the benefits and become a lot more of an efficient organization. really put some traction and some focus into modernization. It's really really needed, so a bit of a kickstart, if you like, and we need to kind of make sure that was happening, and all the work that was going on. There's a huge amount of transformational work going on. We need to make sure we could realise all the benefits and outcomes with well-aligned work. And then finally, really, enabling simplification, modernization and refactoring of applications can drive a number of things. And we were thinking about it not just from a being able to decommission the legacy, but also just simplifying those journeys. So we kind of decided, and there were a number of kind of senior stakeholder discussions about how we do this, and essentially we reached the point where we need to kind of create a really focused team in the structure of tribes, which was the Spotify model or the methodology. And essentially, we set up a series of squads. Now, there was a bit of a debate about how we structure the tribe between, if you like, these functional squads, or whether we align it to the business outcomes. And initially, in order to start and try this out, we decided we kind of create it in this structure, but at some point we would certainly pivot it in the way that we would face up to the demand and the best business outcomes that we had. So this was kind of our structure that we started with, 5 squads essentially, and essentially we had the kind of, it's almost a bit of a flow, and I'll share that in a second about what we did to kind of move from what looks like a relatively siloed structure, but into a flow of work. So at the beginning, there's kind of the opportunities squad at the start of the flow, which essentially was our front door. It basically was where people came to have a discussion about what they wanted to do. There was lots of initiatives going on, so we'd use this to kind of have those initial conversations, do some deep dives of applications to understand what the opportunity was. Was it a good quality opportunity that was easily deliverable, had some good value at the other end of it? So they were the kind of, if you like, as I say, our front door to the work that we would potentially bring into the tribe. Then we had line of sight to cost and plans, probably one of the most difficult for us to kind of establish in reality in terms of a squad. Engaging with lots of external people to understand how we would build a view of all the plans that were going on across BT's transformation, but also the key financial kind of drivers, if you like, in terms of things like license costs, people costs, contractual costs, that we could build a picture of to say, here's an application, we want to modernize it, we want to refactor it. What do we get out at the other end of it in terms of the cost benefits, as well as the simplification outcomes that we would want to get to, including decommissioning. So quite a tricky one. If you've got a good handle on all those things, then it's straightforward. But I think sometimes it's not always easy to link your applications to your cost base at a really granular level, or even unlock it. So it's a real challenge to find those key things that unlock the value in cost. We then kind of have a knowledge repository. So this was our single source of the truth. We wanted to build absolutely, a clear picture. And, we like any organization, have a repository for our config data. We have plenty of discovery tools. And what we wanted to do is kind of aggregate that in a knowledge repository, which would bring all those elements of our estate together. So this was going to be our core data set that would help us understand our estate, make sure we understand how the applications were kind of bolted together, and the journeys in how they interacted, and therefore we could use that to kind of build a picture of our application estate. We then have the kind of, if you like, the execution squads, the refactoring, the decommissioning. Refactoring was what we could talk about today, which is very much about how do we disaggregate our legacy applications. There's lots of stuff in here, a big complex subject. So I'll talk about that in more detail in the next few slides. And then finally, there was decommissioning. So decommissioning was kind of the end of the journey, if you like. we used refactoring potentially to drive and unlock decommissioning, and some things just went straight there. So this was very much about driving the removal of those legacy platforms to the conclusion of they actually physically removed infrastructure from the data center. So lots of things in here. Quite an interesting space in some respects, because actually you have to, if anyone's done a lot of decommissioning or even data center migrations, you'll know that it's not a simple thing of just turning off a system. There's always dependencies which you have to break before you get there. But so end of the journey, but a really important part of it. We then have a bit of the flow of work, and again, it was a flow rather than a process that we wanted to kind of be really rigid. And essentially, back to the tribe picture, it's effectively taking in applications in our opportunity squad, looking at it from the EA roadmaps, trying to analyze the estate to establish the kind of the right group of applications, and gradually, as it kind of flowed through, what we wanted to do is gradually filter it out. So at the end of the pipeline, we would end up with a refactoring candidate, or potentially a decommissioning candidate that we want to take through, that actually took it into the execution of the work. And essentially we built a set of decision trees. We had to consider all sorts of different factors in terms of cost or the people effort that were associated with these applications. How long was it going to take to refactor? Is it complex? Is it simple? So we kind of used the flow to essentially filter it down and end up with the right candidates that we were going to focus on, essentially, and the right value at the other end. What was the value we're going to deliver as a result of our refactoring? So it's a great way to gradually work it through and filter it into the best candidates. So what we did, working with the VMware team, they were great in terms of helping us build our thought process here around what we're going to do. So we kind of created kind of like a buddy up system here of creating a squad structure that would help us basically build a squad that were going to be enabled to bring in applications, execute the refactoring, then return the application team back to a BAU structure with their refactored application in a way that they would continue that journey in the BAU activities. So we essentially had pretty much a standard squad structure: product owners, engineers. And working with VMware, we created a methodology and an approach in that structure that helped us, engage with the teams, bring them in, executing in a method that they were effectively being enabled and skilled up in the approach for refactoring. They're engineers, they know how to code. What we were trying to do was develop the approach with them so that they understood how they were going to do it and the sorts of things that they would need to do once they returned back to BAU. So in creating the squad, what we wanted to do, and in the methodology of the team coming together and joining it with the VMware team as well, helping us to kind of build this, we had to take a series of applications. We'd already kind of captured a set of applications we wanted to try and test out. And essentially what we had to do was look at how we would take a current application, take a slice of that application, so a functional element of it that was easily could be constructed into microservice, and take it from that application and transition it to a platform. Now, the methodology was kind of, we had to develop, and I think there were some quite challenging conversations. Teams weren't necessarily quick to understand the approach. There are some challenges in bringing them to the table, but actually once they were there, I think there was some good conversations and some interesting ways of trying to kind of just break out those things and start with a slice that was relatively straightforward to do. We didn't want to do it in a way that it was complicated and would take a year to do. We wanted like a quarter or 2 quarters worth of activity to kind of take that slice and deliver it into a microservice in our target platform. So there was quite an intensive week of working through how we would break apart that application, understanding the implications, and then working with the team to get them to understand what they would do to turn that into a microservice and do the engineering work to build that microservice, and then get it into to a CI/CD pipeline, turn it into a modernized deliverable microservice that we could take into production. And that was going to continue with the applications we chose. So you take a series of slices and you turn them into microservices. Again, great work with VMware team that helped us kind of develop this methodology, and we're still using it today, and it's still very actively being used in lots of different scenarios for us today to keep that journey going. So what we're thinking about now in terms of scaling, we've got a lot of teams, a lot of applications. So we're kind of testing this out a bit further in terms of how do we scale this with the current team? How do we take it from what is a structure today and build it up? And I think what we're thinking about and what we're developing further is kind of a bit of a combination, really. There are too many applications for us to go too far in building lots of squads to do this. So what we're looking at is almost building an education method through like a sort of a center of excellence around this. It was great to actually do some application refactoring. You learn a huge amount by doing, but actually in order to scale this, there's a limit to what we can do to build squads in this way. So what we're kind of doing is a bit of a hybrid method, doing the important where we have some important applications. We're thinking about, well, do we create more squads that do the critical stuff and engage with certain teams that may be already on a journey to drive that, but build that center of excellence that kind of builds the right methodology and share the best practices and patterns that we have learned through this approach, feed that back into the development teams, and effectively they adopt the methods to kind of execute in a similar way. So what do we learn? A huge amount, actually. And I think, as I said, the doing was the key part of this for me in terms of we have to execute in the right way. So try stuff out. Don't be afraid to try it out in true agile methods. Let's try things out. Let's do it in a slightly different way. If it doesn't work, you pivot in a different way. And that's what we've done, thinking about moving to a kind of a mixed center of excellence approach, that it gives you a slightly different approach. Think about the challenges you have. Changing the way of working is key. I mean, without stating the obvious, I'm sure everybody that's modernizing or refactoring knows that there are lots of things that need to happen to change how people work, moving into the different scenarios and different methods of doing that. So and have some real focus on that. Establish a COE. I think I think in hindsight we should have done that straight away from day one. I think alongside creating that squad, but actually I think doing it helped us realize that that's the best way to do it. Building best practices and methods, standardization, getting the methods consistent across the estate is important. Functional alignment of squads. I mean, having a squad and a tribe structure that are aligned to the same outcomes and benefits absolutely brings a real strength to how we're doing these things and the methods by which we need to do it. Really important, thinking about the outcomes you're trying to do as a tribe. Ensure stakeholders continue to be aligned to the objectives. One of our challenges really was about how do we get those things in front of our stakeholders and keep them there and motivated and focused with us to help us break down the challenges and the barriers we face. Knowing the barriers, things that slow you down. We had to challenge a number of different areas of existing process that were going to slow us down. So we absolutely really don't be afraid, be fearless on those things, to go and challenge them and make sure that they don't get in your way. And finally, use the big imperatives. Modernization on its own is a bit of a challenge, just to kind of keep the momentum behind it. Big imperatives really help you, where you can find big savings or benefits or, data center closures. Those big imperatives really help you accelerate that journey. So I think that's it for me. I think I've covered everything I want to today. So thank you for listening. Thank you
Yeah.
for Spring One for inviting me. Really enjoyed that.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks for being here. That was a great talk. I'm going to have to go over that again to take a second set of notes on it, and hopefully you as well, audience, had a good time. Well, we've got another good talk coming up next. That's a little bit above the computer stack and into the brain stack, if you will. So I'll give you that little preview, and we'll have a short break, and we'll see you very soon. Enjoy the funky music.